I would like to apologize for any sniffles that might occur on this episode because I think I'm coming down with the flu. But let's talk about why you need to stop hanging out with your family. Now, this is very hard when you still have to live with your family, as is my case. I currently live with my family. I am unemployed, and so I have no choice but to live with my mother and my sister. And oftentimes, when you listen to people talk about narcissists or emotional abusers or manipulators or gaslighters, ultimately, the solution they give you is to go no contact. Now, obviously, this word worked differently for everybody, but the solution to go no contact, which is essentially just cutting someone out of your life. So in this case, it's cutting your family out of your life. It's basically a way to prevent any further damage or hurt, because if it's the case of a narcissist, they're probably never going to change. As I am starting to make peace and realize I'm not really making peace. I'm just trying to accept that that is the truth and my family may never change. I'm not at a place where I've made peace with it because it's still hard to accept that they they lack empathy, they are manipulators, they're emotional abusers, they're narcissists. It's still hard to really accept that about them. But now I'm at a point where I just can accept it as a fact. It's just a matter of just like really getting my emotions and mentally truly understanding that they may never really change. I don't really expect much anymore. So I think I am in a process of accepting them, and not necessarily accepting them in the sense that I accept to be abused, manipulated, gaslighted, mistreated, but accepting them in the sense that now I realize that I need to protect myself, that I need to set firm boundaries, that our relationship will now look different. So since I'm still at home, going no contact or cutting off my family is definitely not a choice, not an option that I have. But if I was not home, I'm not sure if I'm at a point where I'm even ready to make that decision. I think I'm at a point where I think like if maybe I can just live far, far away from them and see them only a couple of times in a year, then maybe the relationship will be workable, doable. Not to say that they would have changed, but at least I would see them in moderation. But back to what I want to talk about today, which is not hanging out with your family. So since I'm still living with my family and I obviously see them every day, I have limited how much time I spend with them. And I think I've been more strict when it comes to my sister. So my sister and I, we are currently both here at home. So my mother is the one who goes to work. So during the day, I completely just avoid spending time with my sister. So in as much as it's kind of hard to avoid people that you live with under the same roof, but you kind of have to try to limit your interactions with them. But when it comes to my mother, because she is the breadwinner, she brings the bacon home. I'm at a point where I feel like, and she has never said this, but I feel like I owe her to spend time with her or do whatever she wants me to do, because she is still the one feeding me. That's it. Like, she's feeding me. She is sheltering me, if I could even put it like that, because I'm living in her house. And so with my mother, I try to push myself because I know she will make comments as like, as to say like, you're always in your room, you don't want to spend time with us, yada yada. So I try to push myself, but even when I am with them, I limit my interaction. Like and it has gotten to a point where I'm no longer even forcing it. I think once you get really tired of being manipulated, of being gaslighted, of being abused emotionally, psychologically, once you get tired, it just, for me, it's coming naturally. There have been so many points in my life where I've just been trying to figure out my family, just wishing that we can be more open and vulnerable with each other, wishing that they could be nicer and kinder to me, wishing that they would be mindful of how they speak to me, some of the things that they say that would hurt me. There were times where I still had energy to try and just mend the relationship. But I'm at a point where I'm just so tired. It's at this point it's coming naturally to me to no longer really engage, to no longer really interact with them. So even when I am hanging out with them, we're sitting in the living room, we're talking or we're watching something, like I no longer have the energy to just really be fully present. I no longer have the energy to fully engage because I've been beaten down so much. And now, knowing all that I know about narcissistic personality disorder, I now know that there's nothing I could possibly do or say to them that can change them. So I am very reserved now when it comes to like being with my family. I just hold back even certain things that, like, maybe I would have wanted to say something or comment on something, but I keep it to myself. And I basically am at a point where I don't want to ruffle any feathers, even though that is basically how it has always been within my family. Because one of the things that tends to happen when you live with a narcissist or emotional abuser is that you're always in the state of not wanting to ruffle any feathers or walking on eggshells, not knowing what their mood is going to be, and not knowing, like, because they're also very fragile. So anything you say can quickly offend them because they're overly sensitive, which is crazy because my family has made me feel like I am the one who's too sensitive, because I would say when something would hurt me, only to find out through all the videos and podcasts that I've listened to and the articles that I've read that they are actually the ones who are overly sensitive because they don't like criticism, even if it's constructive criticism. They don't like their flaws and mistakes pointed out. And yes, nobody likes that, but if it's said in a way that can help you improve and be a better person, then at some point we should be willing to listen and hear others out when they point out something that's perhaps not great about us, because then it can give us a chance to improve. So today, which actually made me want to record this episode about no longer hanging out with my family, today we heard that around our area there's an amusement park, I suppose. But those amusement parks that like travel from place to place, we used to call it the merry-go-round. Let me see, is that the right name? But essentially it's like an amusement park where you have all those fun rides, you know? So that's what we were going to. I'm trying to see if it's actually called a merry-go-round, because that's what we grew up calling it. No, I think that's just one particular thing. But that's what we used to call it. But essentially, it's just like, if you're from South Africa, you probably know Gold Reef City. So it's basically just like that, just that they are mobile. So one of the sport grounds, that's where they are located currently. So they're going to be here for a couple of days and then they're going to go to another place. So my mother comes back from work and says, let's go and just have some fun. And typically these are the type of things I would enjoy, because I'm the type of person who likes like extreme fun activities, you know? Things like your bungee jumping. I've never done bungee jumping and I don't want to do it, but that's just like to give you an example of the type of activities that I would usually like. So when it came to themed parks or amusement parks, I would like it. And this type of amusement park, the mobile, let's call it that, the mobile amusement park used to come around our area when we were younger. So it's been a long time since it's been around. And I would be the only one, because like my mother and my sister don't like the extreme rides. Like my sister definitely doesn't like any ride, even if it's like not that extreme. She's just like not even willing to try. And so for me, I would be the one to go on the extreme ride, like the one that goes all the way up to the air and just like spins you all around. That was me. And a part of me thinks that was not really me. That was me trying to be confident. Because what I realized today as we were heading there, like immediately when we got there and my mother was parking the car, I was just like, I got sad. I got sad because for two reasons. One, I felt like, because it was just, I kind of felt like this festive mode, because it's a theme park, it's an amusement park, and like kids are going to be here playing, because it's mainly actually just for kids, even though they are rides for adults, but it's mainly just for kids. So people are coming out with their kids so that they can have fun on the rides. And as my mom was parking the car, because we actually just waited in the car for a couple of minutes because they were still setting up everything, and I just got deeply sad. I got sad because what has been on my mind lately is that I don't have a family. Because honestly, if I remember this one movie, I'm forgetting the name, where this girl just said to this guy who was like ghosting her and stuff. And so they bumped into each other one day, and she just said, relationships are just about being there for each other. That's all they are. And in as much as, yes, there's more to relationships and all of that, but that resonated with me and that stayed with me, because truly relationships, they just about being there for each other. Whether we have money or we don't have money, we're rich or poor, as long as you know that there's someone there for you and you can be there for the other person. That is essentially, in the most basic form and fundamental form, that is what relationships are. Just us being there for each other, whether that's you and your family, you and your partner, you and your kids, you and your siblings, you and your friends. Relationships are just about being there for each other in the good and the bad times, in the fun and the sad times. You're just there. And that for me, it stuck with me, because it was just like the simplest but the truest way to explain what relationships really are. Just simply being there for each other. And in that moment, as I was sitting in the car with my family and we were about to walk out and supposedly have fun together, I realized that these are not people that I'm there for, and they are there for me. Like, I'm no longer there for them. And this is coming for someone who would have dropped anything and done anything for a family, because firstly, I was a people pleaser, and secondly, I was sucking up to them. And that is just like, I feel like that is how I was conditioned to, really, because obviously my mother is a narcissist. She's selfish. She makes everything about her. So I was kind of like raised and conditioned to just only think about other people, never about myself, even in cases where I should. And so as I sat there it just felt like I'm just here with these people, but we're not really a family because we're not open with each other. We're not vulnerable with each other. They hurt me. And I've probably even hurt them before because, like I've said in my previous episodes, when you grow up with a narcissistic family, you probably will have narcissistic traits. That doesn't mean you yourself you are a narcissist, but you'll probably have some residue. You'll probably have some crumbs, some side effects, because those are the people that you grew up with. And you obviously adapted certain traits and tendencies from them. So there probably are times when I also hurt them, maybe emotionally, just like they've hurt me. But what makes it different for my case is because I was always aware that there's a problem. And I was always the kind of person who, like, I would check myself, like, because I've always hated making other people feel bad. I think that is what restrained me even from just like hurting other people or emotionally and verbally hurting other people, because I hate it when somebody feels bad because of what I've done to them. And so I'm sitting there and I'm just feeling sad because this is supposed to be a moment that I'm enjoying with my family. But I'm realizing, and as I'm sitting in the car, that I'm not gonna really enjoy this because these people are not really my family. Biologically they are, but emotionally I don't feel like they're my family anymore. It really doesn't. It really doesn't feel like we are a family. And another reason that I was actually sad, and this one kind of annoyed me, it's because I knew that I would be the one who would have to like take the rides because, and I don't even understand, like, this is so frustrating. I honestly don't even understand why we went there, because in a way it almost seems like we went there because they know that I like the extreme rides, right? And if you're thinking, well, if they don't really want to go for the rides, they don't really participate in this type of thing, but they went there because they know that you love it, that must mean something coming from your family. No, no, it does not mean anything. And the reason it doesn't mean anything is because, like, emotional abuse is so messed up. Narcissistic abuse is so messed up. My family has a way of lifting me up and bringing me down at the same time. So what annoyed me while I was sitting in the car and realizing that, oh, I was going to be the one who's going to have to take the rides, because here's what they'll do and say is that, oh, you enjoy the extreme rides. And I used to. That's a fact. That's truth. And I used to, but what ends up happening is that it's like I become this toy that, oh, because she likes that, like, I don't know how to explain this. But what popped in my mind while we're also sitting there is that one time my sister suggested a radio opportunity. So in our area, they were hiring in our radio station. They were hiring a whole new crew because they needed like content creators, presenters, and all of that. And so my sister suggested that I apply for the presenter position, and I did, and it sucked. It sucked so hard because something that I didn't take into consideration and didn't really think through. Our town radio station is purely in Zulu, and it's like the deep KZN kind of Zulu, and my Zulu is not like on that level. I can speak Zulu fluently because it's my mother tongue, But then when it comes to radio, it's almost just like now you're reading a poem in Zulu and it's just hard. I was definitely not expecting that and I didn't really think about it. And you also had to like read comments in Zulu and like it just almost everything was in Zulu and I was just not coping with that. It was so stressful. We had like 1 week because we had like the interviews and then I made it through. And then we had like a second interview, I believe. And then I also made it through. And then we had like a week of training. And I ended up quitting because I couldn't. It was so stressful for me to do everything in Zulu. And I felt like now I have to be some Shaga Zulu queen speaking the proper Zulu, which I just couldn't do it. And that moment kind of came to me because during that time when I would come back like and ask them, like they would listen to me on the radio because in the week of training you were actually trained live, so you would be live on radio with somebody else who has done this for years. So you would be co-hosting with someone who has been a radio presenter for years so that they can train you, and then they would listen to me on the radio and then I would come back and ask for their feedback, like how did I do. And their feedback would always just leave me feeling like I'm just really doing badly. They wouldn't say that, they would say things like, oh, you're nervous and whatnot. And this is the thing, this is the annoying thing with emotional abusers. It's not something direct as to say, oh, you're doing a bad job. They're not going to say that. But it's in the way that they will say things, even if they're saying something right or good, but how it feels. Listen to how it feels. This is what I'm learning right now. Like, listen, like, even if somebody is saying all the right things and they're giving you compliments and all that, listen to how it feels. How it feels to you will tell you whether it was genuine, whether they really meant what they said, whether it's really coming from a good and a pure heart. And for me, it was annoying to kind of get that feedback, especially for my sister, who's the one who suggested that I do this. And then when I would come back and get feedback from her, it would be wishy-washy, and in that moment, as we were going to this amusement park, that moment also came to me that they have a way of, you would think that it's like, oh yeah, that my family is supporting me. But at the very same time, it's like they're not supporting you. Like, it's crazy making. No wonder narcissism is considered a personality disorder, because it is a disorder indeed. So in this moment, I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah, now, like, I'm going to be the one that they pushing to like do the extreme rides, as if they're saying like, yeah, you brave. They would never say that with their words, but like they act like, oh, you love this, like you'll be good at this. But then I don't know how to explain this. I don't know if I'm explaining it right, but it was a sad moment as I was sitting in that car. And then we obviously got out. And as we were walking around, like I already knew my sister was not going to get on any rides. I wasn't sure about my mom, but I wasn't really expecting her because it's like, she's old, so I'm not really expecting her to do any extreme rides that could possibly make her sick. So as we were there, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, why are we actually here? So I'm the one who's going to be doing the rides. And listen to me, I'm fine with people having certain preferences. Like, certain people don't like heights, certain people don't like certain activities, and that is fine. I am all for it that we don't have to like all the same activities. But in that very moment, I felt like this was just an emotional tactic somehow, because obviously lately I haven't been the same, and I think they see. I've tried my best to not be moody because I am still angry at the fact that they've abused me and continue to abuse me emotionally and continue to manipulate me. I just felt like it was an emotional tactic. And so like they kept pointing at like the extreme rides that I should try. And I said no. And I didn't have an attitude about it. I gave some reason as to say like, oh, that seems hectic. I don't want to try that. But it was all just crap because I was like, I'm not gonna be the toy that gets bounced around whenever they want to bounce it around. Because that's how sometimes it feels to me, like, because they know that in certain things I have the courage to do some things. And it's just like, this is why even the radio presenter thing came to mind, because like my sister knew I would give it a try, because I'm the kind of person, I give something a try even if it's nerve-wracking. I give it a try. And so while I was there, I was just like annoyed. I was like, no, because now that I know all that I know about narcissistic personality disorder, manipulation, gaslighting, I'm always cautious of what they are doing and what they are saying. Because a lot of what they do and say has a lot of manipulation, has a lot of gaslighting, has a lot of confusion. Like, there's just like a lot of emotional confusion when you live with these people, when you have this type of family, when you have this dysfunctional, toxic, narcissistic family. And so my mother and I ended up going on one ride, and then that was it. And I refused. And I also did refuse because I think I'm no longer at a point where I'm trying to prove my confidence. I think even some of the extreme activities that I would do was in a way to prove that I'm confident, that I'm brave, that I'm courageous. And God is taking me in this place that I'm kind of loving, where I don't feel the need to prove that I'm confident, like where I don't feel the need that in order to prove that I'm a risk taker or that I'm confident or that I'm brave, I have to go bungee jumping. I don't feel the need. I think some of the extreme activities that I used to love was because I was just trying to prove a point to people and also to myself that I'm brave because, I'm going to do this extreme thing. Even if it's nerve-wracking or it's scary, I'm going to do it, which is going to prove that I'm brave, that I'm confident, that I'm a risk taker. And now I'm getting to a place where I'm just understanding that I don't have to do that. Just because someone is a risk taker doesn't necessarily mean they're confident. They might be brave because, hey, it's brave to take certain risks. But I think for me, it was more so to prove a point than actually being confident. Now I'm at a point where my confidence is moving to a place where I'm confident to say no to certain things. And just because I say no doesn't mean I'm not brave, I'm not confident, I'm not a risk taker. It just means I'm confident enough to know that I don't want to do that. And so I think even with like the extreme rides that were there and the extreme activities that were there, I think I no longer want to do that. I no longer want to try and prove to myself or prove to the world or prove to my family that I'm confident. Because some of the things that I would do honestly was just to prove a point. And now that I'm in this healing process, I think I'm just like, I'm realizing that there are certain things that I really don't have to do. You know how you always hear in like motivational quotes or like motivational whatever, like influencers, people who talk about self-development is like, put yourself out there, get out of your comfort zone, take a risk. It's not always necessary because sometimes confidence is looking like knowing that, you know what, I don't want to do that. And I don't have to do that in order to prove that I'm confident. I don't have to do certain things just to prove that I'm confident or that I'm a risk taker. Yes, I am all for getting out of your comfort zone. But at this point, it's shaping out to be something different than what I thought it had to be. And as I was there looking at the extreme rides and just like, besides the fact that I felt like my family was using me as a toy to be like, oh, you go up there, you go up there. I'm like, then why are we here if you guys don't want to take any of the rides? Like, why? Like, why are we even here? Because you don't want to take the ride. So now I'm going to be the toy that's going to be bounced around. Like, you take that ride, you take that ride because you're not scared. No. But also, it was just the fact that I realized that I don't have to do that. I don't have to prove how brave I am or courageous I am or confident I am or how much of a risk taker I am by doing something extreme. I just don't have to do it anymore.